Formula One champions all end up wealthy. That part's unavoidable. What isn't is how they started. From parents working 3 jobs to sacrificing literally everything they own, some of the champions on this list had childhoods that couldn't have been further from the lavish world of Formula One. But the others, well, they were born into a life of luxury with millions of dollars at their disposal. Today, we're taking a look at some of the richest and poorest Formula One champions the world has ever seen. And we're starting off with the legendary
Michael Schumacher gets his 7th Formula One World Championship.
That's right, even one of the greatest drivers ever came from an incredibly humble background, where he and his family had to fight for literally everything they had. Born in 1969 on January the 3rd in Herth, West Germany, Michael's upbringing couldn't have been further from the lavish world of Formula One. His father Rolf worked as a local bricklayer, but deep down inside, he had a passion for engineering. And so, when Michael was just 4 years old, Rolf decided to modify his pedal car, attaching a small motorbike engine to it, just like any loving parent would. As you can imagine, it didn't take the 4-year-old long to crash his new toy, but Rolf saw something special in his son, so along with Michael's mother Elizabeth, they made the decision to enroll him into the local karting club at Köpenhamn. When they did, Michael became the club's youngest member by far. But to even have a chance of competing with the other drivers, Michael needed an actual kart, and that was an expense the Schumachers simply couldn't afford, leaving them only one option. Rolf collected as many spare, discarded parts as he could and built his son a homemade kart. It wasn't pretty, but it was all Michael needed to showcase his talent. And man, did he do that. Because at just 6 years old, he won his first club championship. At 6, that is just mind-blowing. But even the costs of a junior karting career are astronomical, putting the Schumachers under immense financial strain. And so, Rolf had to take up a second job at renting and repairing karts down at the track, while Elizabeth ran the canteen. Their lives revolved around racing, with every weekend, every evening, and every penny they saved spent at the track, trying to keep Michael's dream alive. And remember I mentioned a second ago that Michael won the club championship at the age of 6? Well, I forgot to mention a crucial detail about that.
Wir sind immer mit den billigsten Mitteln gefahren, die möglich waren. Und wenn andere Reifen weggeschmissen haben, dann habe ich sie mir wieder aus der Mülltonne rausgeholt und habe sie bei mir draufgetan und habe damit Rennen gewonnen.
Racing on old, used tires that his competitors had thrown away. Talk about talent. And when the time came for Michael to get his karting license, the Schumachers had a smart way to save money there as well.
Du startest für Luxemburg, warum?
Weil in Deutschland müssen wir Qualifikationsläufe fahren und das kostet Geld. Und wenn wir da ausfallen, sind wir nicht für die WM qualifiziert. Und in Luxemburg sind wir als einzigster Starter und das kostet kein Geld und wir sind qualifiziert.
Saving money and qualifying for the World Championships at the same time? Absolutely genius. But when the engine to his kart eventually gave up, the Schumachers were in an impossible position. They simply couldn't afford a new engine.
Michael Schumacher hatte damals wirklich nichts, also keine 500 Mark, um so eine Saison zu bestreiten. Die kostete aber damals schon zwischen 600.000 und 700.000.
That kind of expense was insurmountable, and it began to feel as though all the sacrifice and dedication might ultimately lead to nothing. That may have well been the case if Michael's talent hadn't caught the attention of a local carpet salesman named Gerhard Noack. Noack paid for a new engine, an act that, quite simply, kept Michael's dream alive. Without him, it would have ended right there. By the mid-80s, Michael was winning more often than not. He was the German junior kart champion in 84 and 85, and then the German senior champion in 87. But the reality of the Schumachers' financial situation never changed. Every step towards Formula One only got more expensive, and Rolf and Elizabeth had given almost everything they had. And looming over it all was the next obstacle for Michael to conquer: single-seater racing. Karting was expensive enough, but moving into cars was something else entirely. Engines, gearboxes, testing, costs that dwarfed anything the Schumachers had faced before. For a family already stretched to breaking points, it felt like an impossible barrier. But then, finally, something changed. Michael's performances began to attract serious attention within German motorsports, not only because he was fast, but because he was relentlessly consistent, disciplined, and devastatingly efficient with machinery that was well past its prime. The man who saw something special in Michael, Willy Webber.
1988 fiel mir das ganze Jahr über ein junger Mann auf, namens Michael Schumacher. Aber nicht die Siege haben es mir angetan, sondern wie er das Auto bewegt hat. Ich habe ihm dann angeboten, in mein Team zu fahren.
Webber was a German motorsport manager, someone who understood how careers were built long before drivers ever reached Formula One. He stepped in and took Michael on as his client, and for the first time, Michael's career had structure, funding, and a serious plan to take him all the way to the top. Webber guided Michael through the right championships, placed him in the right cars, and introduced him to the right people. He understood which results mattered and which didn't, and the wins soon followed, as he claimed the 1990 German F3 Championship. That impressive result secured him a deal racing sports cars for Mercedes, placing Michael inside a professional racing program for the first time in his life. And from there, everything accelerated, because when Eddie Jordan, the founder and team principal of the Jordan F1 team, needed a last-minute replacement for the Belgian GP in '91, Mercedes, who knew Michael was destined for greatness, paid for him to get that single opportunity. And that was all he needed, because from there, everything would change. Michael Schumacher had reached Formula One. His dream was now a reality. Championships followed, records followed, and all the wealth he could ever dream of did too. But none of that would have happened without those years where every race felt like it could be the last. Those excruciating times where every weekend could have ended the dream. Rolf, Elizabeth, and Michael refused to let the system crush them, and Michael came out the other side as the first billionaire athlete the world had ever seen, and arguably the greatest Formula One driver of all time. While Michael Schumacher had to fight for every inch of his route into Formula One, there's one thing you shouldn't have to struggle with today: running your own business. And that's where this video sponsor Odoo comes in. If you're running a business or even just starting one, Odoo is an all-in-one management platform that has every app you need all in one place: accounting, invoicing, CRM, website building, and many more, all working together inside one clean dashboard. One of my favorite apps is Odoo's website builder, and this is where it gets impressive. Odoo walks you through just a few simple steps. Choose what kind of website you want, pick your industry and goals, upload your logo or choose a color palette, select the pages and features you want, then choose a theme. And that's it. The entire structure of your website is built for you in minutes. From there, customizing is insanely easy. You just drag and drop elements exactly where you want them, change text, images, layouts, colors, and you can even add animations to really bring the page to life. And here's the best part: Odoo gives you one app completely free forever with unlimited hosting and support. They even give you a free custom domain for your first year. So, just like Michael needed the right structure to unlock his potential, Odoo gives you the structure to unlock yours. So, try Odoo's website builder for free by clicking the link in the description. Now, back to the champions. If Michael Schumacher's story is about fighting for the right to race, Nico Rosberg's story starts with the opposite problem: having access to everything and still needing to prove you're worthy of it. Nico was born on June 27, 1985 in Wiesbaden, Germany, into a family that already had Formula One written into its DNA. His father, Keke Rosberg, the 1982 world champion, and by the time Nico was old enough to understand what a race weekend even was, the family were living in Monaco, the same streets where his father had won in Formula One, one of the wealthiest countries per capita in the world, and yes, it also happens to be a tax haven. Nico didn't grow up around racing. It was a part of his life from the moment he was born. The paddock wasn't some mythical place on TV. It was normal. Drivers weren't untouchable heroes, they were people his dad knew. And the opportunities in front of him, well, they were endless. But with that access came something else: pressure. Because when your father is a world champion, people don't just watch you, they judge you.
I grew up in a family where one of my parents was very, very successful. In this case, it was my dad. He was a Formula One world champion. And so growing up into that, and then especially trying to follow that same path and going into racing myself, was really demanding at first, because so many people were watching me straight away from the get-go as a 10-year-old and were judging me and saying, okay, is he as good as his dad? It was a lot of pressure on me, a lot of expectation from everybody around.
That was the reality for Nico Rosberg. The upside of privilege came with one major downside: expectations. When your dad has an estimated net worth of over $30 million and is also an F1 champion, there really is no room to hide. He'd had his first taste of karting at just 4 years old, while on holiday in Ibiza. His father put him in a kart, controlled the speed from the pedals, and something clicked. Watching his dad race only reinforced it, and by the age of 6, Nico wasn't just having fun anymore, he had a goal. He wanted to become a Formula One world champion.
Kann er mir Go-Kart fahren beibringen und dann später werde ich Formel 1 fahren.
So, at 6 years old, Nico began karting properly. His parents supported him on one condition: he kept his grades up at school. And while karting gave him purpose, school wasn't always easy. Nico struggled socially, faced bullying, and often felt like an outsider.
Just as it is for a lot of people in school. So I was bullied, and it was sometimes a difficult time.
Like, what would they do?
Well, in class, for example, shoot chewing gum through the straws into my hair and things like that, and then spitting and pinning me down and stuff like that. So yeah, sometimes difficult times at school, yeah.
But he didn't let that discourage him. Instead, he channeled everything into racing. With his father managing his career, Nico had everything most young drivers don't: endless funding, a world champion's experience, and basically unlimited connections. And the results came quickly. Nico began winning regional and national titles at a young age, becoming one of the youngest champions in French karting, before then progressing to European-level competition. With his dad's money and experience, he could really enter any competition he wanted. But man, did he make the most of it, and by the age of 15, he was racing at the very top of the karting world. That's where his path crossed with another future champion and driver in this video, Lewis Hamilton. They raced together, even as teammates in the Formula A karting series. But we'll get back to Lewis a little later, because his journey couldn't have been more different than Nico's. After years of competing at the very top of the karting scene, Rosberg made the move to single-seater racing in 2001, aged 17 years old. And in his very first full season, he made an immediate statement. Rosberg dominated the Formula BMW ADAC Championship, winning 9 races from 20 and controlling the series from start to finish. It was clear this wasn't a driver riding on a famous surname. Nico was building a legacy of his own. From there, the rise was perfectly managed. Formula 3 followed, then GP2 in 2005 with ART, where Rosberg won 5 races and became the first GP2 champion. His GP2 season was impossible to ignore, and Williams were watching. They tested him, he impressed, and in 2006, Nico Rosberg made his Formula 1 debut for Williams in Bahrain, finishing 7th and setting the fastest lap on debut. And after 10 years of racing in Formula 1, he would go on to accomplish his childhood dream.
Lewis Hamilton wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Nico Rosberg is second. He takes the championship for the Rosbergs.
Nico Rosberg didn't have to fight for access the way Schumacher did. His battle was different. His career began with a head start, but he still had to earn every ounce of respect the hard way, which brings us to our next world champion, someone we've already seen racing alongside him, someone who, like Schumacher, had to fight for absolutely everything. His name, Sir Lewis Hamilton.
The world champion takes the checkered flag.
Great job, guys. Fantastic.
Driver to win in America for 24 years. Lewis Hamilton wins!
If Nico grew up inside the paddock, Lewis grew up looking through the fence. He was born on January the 7th, 1985 in Stevenage, Hertfordshire, a commuter town north of London, a long way removed from Monaco yachts or Formula 1 motorhomes. His parents separated when he was 2 years old, meaning his home life was far from stable. He was raised primarily by his father, Anthony Hamilton, in a small council house where nothing came easy and very little was taken for granted. But from the very beginning, Lewis was different, not just talented, but different. When he was just 5 years old, Lewis entered the world of motorsport, but not in the way you might expect. It began with a remote control car his father had gifted him, and from the moment he picked up the controller, it was clear Lewis had a natural talent for racing. And just a year later, he finished second in the British Radio Control Car Championship, a championship where he was competing against adults. Anthony immediately recognized his son's racing instincts, so despite it being a terrible financial decision, he bought Lewis a second-hand go-kart to see whether those RC skills could translate to the track. He also made a promise: he would do everything possible to support his son as long as Lewis worked hard in school. By the age of 8, Lewis made his competitive karting debut, and the journey had truly begun. As you might have guessed, karting was expensive, brutally so. Entry fees, engines, tires, travel. One season could wipe out a family's entire savings account. Only Anthony didn't have a savings account to wipe out.
And after his first race, I knew I was in trouble and needed more money, so I then picked up some other jobs, some odd jobs. One of them was dishwashing, and one of them was putting up signboards for a local estate agent. which didn't pay much, but it all helped.
Just like Rolf before him, Anthony was willing to sacrifice everything for his boy. Now that is dedication, and all while Lewis's stepmother Linda helped keep the house afloat. Lewis entered the British Cadet Karting Championship in '93, but when he did so, he was one of very few black children on the grid, which is a fact that cannot be stressed enough, because karting paddocks weren't just competitive, they were hostile, and what Lewis had to go through, well, that was just horrible.
In the past years, I've had racist names being called to me. The first time it happened, I felt really upset. I told my mum and dad. I felt like I needed to get revenge on them, but lately, if anybody had said anything to me, I would just ignore them and get them back on the track.
At an age where most kids are worried about school lunches and sleepovers, Lewis was learning how cruel the world can be, how resilient and strong of character he needed to be, and how important it was to shut it out and drive. So drive he did. In '95, at just 10 years old, Lewis won the British Cadet Karting Championship, the youngest winner the series had ever seen. That same year, dressed in a suit far too big for him, Lewis attended the Autosport Awards in London, where he would have nothing short of a life-changing conversation.
When I met Ron Dennis, I asked for his autograph in my autograph book. I asked for him to put his address down and his phone number, and he wrote in the autograph book, phone me in 9 years and we'll sort something out then.
The years that followed were relentless. Lewis kept winning, and winning, and winning. But every step through the karting ranks only increased the financial pressure, and to be taken seriously, Lewis needed to compete in Europe, where a weekend karting could bankrupt an entire family. So Anthony did what Schumacher's father had done years earlier. He made the impossible become possible for his son. He took out loans, he worked nights, he slept less and less and less. But the costs were adding up, and like the Schumachers, Anthony and Lewis needed a miracle, an angel to save them from the never-ending financial stress. And it was in 1998 that angel appeared, or should I say, reappeared. It was Ron Dennis, the man who Lewis had spoken to at the awards ceremony 3 years prior. He'd been watching from a distance all this time, and Lewis's results were simply impossible to ignore. Ron and McLaren made the decision to sign Lewis to their young driver program. He was 13, and the youngest driver they'd signed in the company's history. So, with that, for the first time in his life, the financial hardship eased. With McLaren's backing, Lewis finally had access to the right races and the right level of competition. He could travel wherever he needed to and focus purely on performance. Over the next few years, the results followed. Lewis kept winning. Progression into single-seater racing was inevitable, and he made the step in 2001. From there, the record speaks for itself. 2003, Formula Renault World Champion. 2005, Formula 3 Champion. 2006, GP2 Champion in his rookie year. That was the final piece of proof Ron and McLaren needed. He was promoted straight into a Formula 1 racing seat for 2007, pairing him alongside the reigning double world champion Fernando Alonso. When Lewis Hamilton lined up on the grid in Australia for that first race, he didn't just represent raw talent, he represented years of sacrifice. That's why his story sits alongside Schumacher's. Talent alone is never enough. Someone has to believe. Someone has to make the sacrifices. For Lewis Hamilton, that someone was Anthony. Together, they changed Formula 1 forever.
Well, records are there to be broken, said Michael Schumacher. The record is broken. Hamilton has more wins than any other driver in Formula 1 history.
And that brings us to the 2025 world champion, Lando Norris. Let me tell you right from the start, Lando didn't have to step anywhere near a second-hand go-kart because his father has money, serious money. By the time Lando was born on November the 13th, 1999 in Bristol, England, his father Adam Norris had already built a successful financial services company, Pensions Direct, a company that just 8 years later would be sold at a valuation of £800 million. These days, he's known as the founder and CEO of Pure Electric Scooters, but that's besides the point. He's rich. And from the moment Lando stepped foot into a kart, he used that money to fund his son's dream. Right from the start, Lando had access to the best equipment, karts, and opportunities. But from his very first competitive race, at just 7 years old, one thing was clear. Unlike so many other drivers with rich parents, Lando actually had the talent to match his backing. In his first ever national event, he claimed pole, and thanks to his dad's immense wealth, he could progress through the karting ranks as soon as he was ready, never having to wait on sponsorships like like some other drivers on this list. And credit to Lando, the results follow quickly as he won both UK and European titles in 2013, before becoming the youngest FIA karting world champion in his class just 1 year later. As you'd expect with that kind of performance, Lando stepped into single-seaters with Formula MSA the following year, and with his talent and funding, it should come as no surprise that he won the championship immediately. To follow that was Formula Renault, and then Formula 3. But despite the increasing competition, he still managed to rise to the top of the field in every series he competed in. In 2017, Lando had the biggest year of his life. Not only because he convincingly won the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, but because midway through the season, McLaren decided to sign him to the Young Driver program, with the ultimate goal of fast-tracking him toward Formula 1. And after just one full season in Formula 2, in which he came runner-up to George Russell, that goal was accomplished, as Lando made his F1 debut in 2019. From there, all the ups,
Lando Norris wins for the first time in Formula 1!
all the downs,
And Hamilton takes the lead of the race as Lando Norris slides off the track!
they all led to one moment, the 2025 Drivers' World Championship.
Lando Norris is the Formula 1 World Champion!
And now, having gone from the youngest champion on the grid, we turn to the oldest, and his story couldn't be any more different. Fernando Alonso Diaz was born on July 29, 1981, in Oviedo, a small city in northern Spain, into a working-class family. His father, Jose Luis Alonso, worked in the local coal mines as an explosives expert, while his mother, Ana Maria Diaz Martinez, worked in a local department store. By all accounts, Fernando was born into a seemingly normal family, but man, did that change quickly. You see, Jose had a little karting experience of his own and wanted to get his children involved in the sport. So, in the garage of their family home, he built a car from scratch, but not for Fernando. For his older sister, Lorena, who was 8 years old at the time. But when she showed little interest in driving it, it was passed down to Fernando, who was just 3. And from his very first outing, he was hooked. Fast forward 2 years, and Fernando was granted a karting license by the local racing federation. He was only 5 years old. Thinking about someone that age racing on outdoor circuits is just crazy. But even back then, I'd still put my money on him being faster than Lance Stroll. Coming from a family where money was tight meant serious compromises had to be made, and his race equipment was no exception. His mother made his race suits by hand, resizing them as he grew, and when it rained, there were no expensive wet tyres for the young Spaniard. But that didn't matter, because he stayed out on slicks anyways. What a legend. But what Alonso lacked in equipment, he made up for in talent, and after a few years of experience, he won his first karting race age 7. That certainly wouldn't be his last. Over the next few years, Fernando raced in regional and national Spanish championships, with international competition out of reach due to the cost of travelling across Europe. So, he made Spain his proving ground and dominated all he could. And that dominance led to a turning point. While racing at a circuit just south of Barcelona, Fernando caught the attention of Janice Marco, a former karting world champion and team owner. Impressed by his performances, Marco took Fernando under his wing, helping sharpen his skills and, crucially, secure the sponsorship he needed to move beyond Spain.
I won the Spanish championship in '94, and then one Italian mechanic showed me there in the Spanish championship and said, you have to come to Italy and race in your European championships and world championships. And my father answered, we can't afford to travel to Italy and those kind of things. So they said, okay, I will speak with the factory and they can help you. So yeah, it's how I started.
With some real funding now secured, the Alonsos could finally afford to take Fernando karting in Europe and give his career a real chance. But the support only went so far. It was enough to compete, but it was far from enough to be comfortable. And so Fernando worked as a mechanic and mentor for younger drivers, maintaining their karts and earning whatever he could to help keep the dream alive. By the mid to late 90s, Fernando had already started to fill up his trophy cabinet. National championships, international championships, world championships, you name it, Fernando won it. Naturally then, he moved into single-seater racing, and with the sponsorships racking up, Fernando really began to show us what he was capable of, winning the Formula Nissan Championship in his very first season. After further progression through the junior categories and some time spent as a Formula One test driver, Fernando made his debut with Minardi in 2001, and it's crazy to think that the same boy who just 15 years earlier had raced in homemade suits and discarded equipment went on to become a two-time Formula One world champion in 2005 and 2006. It stands as a testament not just to Fernando's talent, but to the sacrifices his parents made from the moment he stepped into that homemade kart all those years ago. This next champion needs no introduction, because in recent years, he's won everything you can imagine.
At 18 years and 227 days old, Max Verstappen wins a Formula One Grand Prix.
Max Verstappen wins the Miami Grand Prix. Max Verstappen wins the Belgian Grand Prix. The Dutch driver has dominated once more. 7 victories in a row for Max Verstappen, who wins the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Born on September 30th, 1997 in Hasselt, Belgium, Max Verstappen was surrounded by motorsport from day one. His father, Jos Verstappen, competed in Formula One, though without major success, and is perhaps remembered for this famous incident.
Glimpse of it from Verstappen. Oh, and fuel. That's the first time we've had a fuel splash. Oh my goodness me.
Max's mother, Sophie Kumpen, was also deeply involved in motorsport. She was one of the fastest karters of her generation, regularly beating drivers who would later become household names. Max may not have faced the same financial struggles as some other champions, with his father's net worth estimated between 8 and 20 million euros, but he had something no amount of money could buy: raw talent. And from the moment Max was old enough to sit in a kart, that talent shone through. But let me make this clear, karting was never a hobby for Max, because Jos wasn't raising a child who happened to race, he was raising a racer who happened to be a child. After a few years honing his skills, he made his competitive karting debut at just 7 years old, and almost immediately, his childhood disappeared. Training sessions were relentless, mistakes weren't brushed off, and losing, well, that certainly wasn't tolerated. If Max finished second, or God forbid he made a mistake, the drive home was brutal.
Ik kwam met hem praten erover, dan word ik ervan bond en die actie, maar hij was natuurlijk zo boos. Hij zei, stop, ik kon niet met je praten, maar ik ben natuurlijk doorgaan. Ik kon niks horen bij jou. Dus ik ben boos op hem. Hij zei, als je nu nog één keer wat zegt, dan gooi ik je eruit. Nou ja, ik sloot dat de eerste minuut gewoon nog wat zeggen. Nou, we stoppen bij een tankstation en hij zegt eruit. Die ging eruit. Ze zet de deur op eruit. En toen reed hij weg.
Not to mention the fact that Jos was constantly pushing him into the spotlight. Because Jos believed in one thing above all else, Max was destined to become a champion. But to get there, the pressure had to be constant. Thanks to the lack of financial constraints, weekends were spent crisscrossing Europe: Italy, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands. While other kids his age were playing football or riding bikes, Max was learning how to manage tire degradation, defend aggressively, and win races against drivers twice his age. And none of it was just for the experience either. He needed to dominate or suffer Jos's wrath as a consequence.
I was driving like a potato, I swear, it was really bad.
I said, fuck, what is he doing? So I called him in. I was always in the tracks.
Yeah.
So he came back into
this trouble.
So he would stand up and I really smashed him on his helmet here. Bang! And he was like...
All the mechanics around were like, what happened there?
And then, and I said, what are you doing? He said, we're here, it's World Championship, and I think we can win it.
By the time Max reached the European karting scene, the results were impossible to ignore. He won titles relentlessly. In 2013 alone, Max won 3 European karting championships and the KZ World Championship, competing against fully grown professionals in shifter karts at just 15 years old. And unlike Schumacher or Hamilton, money was never the obstacle. The Verstappens could afford engines, tires, travel, testing. What Max lacked was mercy. There was no safety net of patience for him. Every race mattered, and every mistake had consequences. By 2014, the karting chapter closed abruptly as he progressed into single-seater racing. Max skipped the traditional junior Formula ladder entirely and jumped straight into Formula 3 with Van Amersfoort Racing. Again, the move was aggressive, and again, the pressure followed. So, what did he do? He won races immediately, 10 wins to be exact, and was right in the championship fight as a rookie. His performances were so explosive that Red Bull didn't see potential, they saw their future. So at just 16 years old, old, Max Verstappen was signed into the Red Bull Junior program. At 17, he was placed into Formula One. When Max made his debut at the 2015 Australian Grand Prix, he became the youngest driver in the sport's history, and an argument could be made that he arrived with more resilience than a lot of the other drivers on the grid after what Jos had put him through. Max Verstappen didn't fight to enter Formula One, he was engineered for it. And that difference, that ruthless preparation, explains everything that followed: the aggression, the fearlessness, the refusal to yield. 6 years later, he became a world champion 4 times over. And if I were a betting man, I'd say he's got plenty more coming his way. And speaking of betting, I bet you'll enjoy this video on a driver who had all the funding and support he could dream of. But instead of winning a championship, he won the title of the most dangerous driver the sport has ever seen.